Hey folks, I'm Troy and you're watching TroyTube. Today we're going to talk about heat press. However, we're going to talk about what to watch for and not to buy when you're buying a heat press. So recently someone contacted me and asked me to do a review on a heat press. And they said they would send me the heat press at no charge, wanted me to do a review video on the heat press and evaluate it and everything. And I said, sure, send it to me. Let me take a look at it and everything. Got everything, got it set up, did a little investigation on the company. Anybody that's followed me for a while knows that I do my diligence. I like to take a look at the company, figure things out. They have a warehouse here in the U.S. Of course, any of these heat presses that are these lower cost $200, $300, $400 heat presses are generally made overseas, usually in China or Malaysia or something, and they're lower cost, made with lower quality parts, lower labor, things like that. And so there's sacrifices with those, but there are some pretty good units that you can get. You just have to be careful what you buy. But there are also some that are absolute, not something that I would recommend. And so I'm not going to tell who the vendor was that sent me this heat press. They, like I said, they have a warehouse here in the U.S. They have their own website. Did some investigation, asked the questions, asked some of the hard questions about support, things like that, and said, well, go ahead and send me the heat press. Let me take a look at it, and we'll take a look at doing a video. So I got the heat press, started taking it out of the box, started assembling it, and I started to see some red flags, and decided to investigate a little bit further. I actually sent them an email today and said, here are the reasons I'm not going to do a review on your heat press. And, I'm going to, I'm not going to do this. I can't recommend it. I have to maintain the integrity of my channel. As a matter of fact, here's the email that I sent. I'm going to block out the person's name and everything. And I'm going to show you the control box here in a minute. I put a label over the brand name. I'm not going to talk about that. I'll let them deal with their own issues with this particular model. They may have other ones that are better, I don't know. But so I just, I'm not going to compromise the integrity of my channel to make a buck. It's just not the way I work. I'm an engineer. I have a degree in electronic engineering. I'm quite familiar with this stuff. And I've seen a lot of pictures online with different heat presses over the years and problems people have with them. And that was what raised some of the flags. So I took the control box for this heat press and started looking at it. And the first thing that raised a flag to me was that it comes with a separate power cord that plugs into the box just like a computer power cord. And when you have connections like this thing is like an appliance. So a heat press generally pulls as much power as like a space heater. So they're like 1,300 watts to 1,500 watts of power. And you don't want to run them on a small extension cord or a cheap power strip or something like that. You would want something at least that's like a heavy duty construction grade power strip or extension cord or something like that. And then even then, not a very long one if you do that. Those things are just important because of the amount of current they draw in order to heat that heating element. And so anytime you have a connection, an electrical connection where two pieces of metal are touching each other and they're not soldered or anything like that and permanently connected, the two pieces of metal basically, I guess at a microscopic level, they basically clap together and electricity arcs between the two pieces, and that creates a problem over time. It creates heat. It chars between the two pieces of metal, things like that, and it will just eventually not work. It'll cause problems, carbon buildup and corrosion and decay, and eventually possibly even fire. I hate to use the fire word because it scares people probably beyond what they probably what it should, but those things are real. And for an appliance, I would say this, I've never in my life seen a space heater that draws 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,500 watts of power with a separate power cord. The power cords are always molded into the unit, and they're soldered inside to the circuit boards or the switches or whatever they're connected to on the inside, not a plug-in power cord. So that was the first red flag. So I took the control box, took it apart, and examined it even closer to see what other red flags might be prevalent. So took the back off the control box, and sure enough, see these little connectors? These are crimped on connectors that slide on to this little thing where the power cord plugs in, and they slide onto the switch that's in here. Everything has like slide-on connectors. Now they do that because for multiple reasons. One, it's very quick to assemble. It's cheaper labor to assemble rather than having to solder the wires, which takes a person or a very expensive machine piece of equipment. Something like this would almost have, I don't know, I've never seen the process. I think a piece of equipment can probably do it, but in this case, on something this scale, probably definitely a human, to strip the wires, solder it, test it, make sure it's good and solid and clean, experience, things like that, versus a wire that can be mass produced by definitely a machine that can measure the wire, strip it to length, put a connector on it and crimp it, and put a little rubber boot on it. I'm pretty confident that can all be automated, and they can just order those little wires from somewhere, and then they can set people down and have these things just assembled and put together in an assembly line. Much, much lower cost labor to do those things. So that was the second red flag, was these little slide-on connectors that are in this box. The next red flag, there is no fuse or circuit breaker on this thing whatsoever. So if anything goes wrong, you're talking about a heating element that's like a space heater. Space heaters have a little thing in them that if you knock them over, they kick off, or if they overload, they'll kick a circuit breaker inside and they'll quit working. This heat press has nothing like that. So if anything happens, it's not going to shut off. Your biggest hope is that either the wire melts and breaks so that it just disconnects, or that your circuit breaker in your house kicks off, or whatever you have it plugged into kicks off. That's quite frightening to me. The other, probably, I guess less of a big red flag, but from an electronics standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, that little yellow thing right here, that's the transformer, and that transformer operates the whole unit. So, as far as how much power that thing can supply to the heat press and operate it and everything, it looks awful small to me. Transformers and VCRs and DVD players and all of these things, they're quite a bit larger than that. And, throughout my career of electronics, which goes back to when I started taking part radios when I was 10 years old. So I've seen these things for, I'm 52 now, so that'd be 42 years probably. Over 40 years I've seen electronics and the evolution and technology. This is some solid state electronics. It's also some old school electronics. It has to operate a heating element, just like your oven. So this isn't, like super high tech piece of equipment like a computer or an iPhone or something like that. Pretty much understand everything that's in here. And I just think everything is underscaled for longevity. I don't think it's going to last very long on top of that. So again, I looked at this. I think this heat press sells for probably around $250 or so on Amazon. It was one that was a multifunction 6-in-1 or 8-in-1 or something like that heat press that came with all the attachments for sublimation and everything. And based on what I saw after I started to really look at the control box, and everything centered around this control box. As far as the functionality and the dangers. Now, I'm not going to show you the rest of the heat press, but looking at it here, when I looked at the rest of it, it's not built well at all either. I did some other reviews on other heat presses in the last several years. One of them was another somewhat similar heat press that was made in China that was in that same price range. And that heat press worked very well. Now, I haven't done anything of the newer models that they have. In fact, the newer models, I think, look similar to this one. I don't know yet. But their older ones were a lot better quality than this one. In order to apply enough pressure with this heat press, or if you use one of those products that requires very heavy pressure, what I would call very heavy pressure, is something that, if you were to put your hand in it and close it, it might break your fingers. That kind of extremely heavy pressure. I'm not so sure the post on the back of this heat press wouldn't snap off if I did that. So I just can't imagine something like this. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk about that and give people an idea of what not to buy, the questions to ask. Does your heat press have a fuse or a circuit breaker? Does the cord detach from it, or is it molded and built onto the heat press and soldered inside, or does it have slide-on connectors inside the control box? Where do you get replacement parts? Do you have parts available in the US if something goes wrong with it? What if I get it and something's missing? How soon can you send out the correct parts or replacement parts? Ask those kind of questions before you buy it and see how quick they respond and how well they assure you what they can do for you. Those are the kind of things that I would take a look at on something like this. Clamshell heat presses, those lower cost clamshell presses, are probably less of a concern. A lot of those do have the same things though, attached power cord and fuse and circuit breaker, but they have a lot less attached parts that can go wrong with them than these multifunction 6-in-1, 8-in-1 type heat presses do. So they're a little bit simpler as far as how they operate than these are. But again, I just wanted to take a few minutes and share that with everybody and give them my perspective on that, because like I said, 40 plus years of electronics experience, 7 years of heat press and crafting experience now, with all different types of equipment of all scales, from bottom of the barrel to the highest end several $1,000 price range heat presses and cutters and things like that. And I think I have a pretty good judgment on what to look for. There are lower cost items that you can get that work well and are safe and things like that I would recommend. This is not one of them. So those are the things to watch for. And I've seen a lot of these heat presses over the years. People post pictures, and the inside of these boxes, the switches and the plugs are literally melted. And that's why. They're underscaled. They're not soldered. The cords plug in. There's no circuit breaker, no fuse, things like that. It's all a recipe for disaster for the box and the control box and the cords and everything lasting. It's not going to work out well in the end for them. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them down below the video. Hopefully that's been helpful for you.